Ever wondered what the future looks like in FDA submission maybe? So now we are going to walk through the Pilot 4 results and you will see how integrated advanced technologies can expedite clinical trial practices. In this journey, you will be guided by two amazing Appsilonians. Tymoteusz Makowski, software engineer with extensive experience working on both backend and frontend, and Andre Verissimo, researcher, programmer interested in finding simple solutions for complex problems. Please give a warm welcome to our Appsilon rockstars, Andre and Timek.
Hi, thank you, Aga, for a warm welcome. Today we are going to talk about shaping the future of the FDA submissions. We'll tell you about Pilot 4's journey and how we used containers and WebR there. But first, who are we? My name is Tymoteusz Makowski, Tymek for short. I had the opportunity to take part in WebR side of Pilot 4. I'm a senior R-Shiny developer at Appsilon with a total tenure of 2 years. In my spare time, I like hacking on side projects, gaming, and watching programming content. Andre, I think you are muted.
Oh, okay, sorry. My name is Andre, and I'm a senior engineer at Appsilon working on life sciences projects that help our clients better understand and interact with data. I have a PhD on computer science from the University of Lisbon, where I explore new survival models applied to omics data. In my free time, I'm passionate about climbing and open source. I'm privileged to work on one of those passions at Appsilon, the open source one, and I'm inspired by the communities that are built around tools such as R and Shiny. One of those communities that both me and Timek are part of is the R Consortium Submission Working Group that has a mission to drive forward clinical trial submissions to regulatory agencies, all based on R, which we are going to talk about during this presentation. We'll start briefly by introducing the working group, define the problem that we are trying to solve, and then discuss solutions that we developed. The R Consortium Working Group brings together companies in the pharma industry and the FDA regulatory agency from the US to help shape the future of clinical trial submissions. There are already a bunch of pilots that have succeeded, and we are preparing pilot 4. The first was a test in submitting to the FDA. The first pilot was a test to submit a simple R package with vignettes that created tables, listings, and graphs for a clinical trial with data already prepared. Then, pilot 2 focused on creating a Shiny and a simple Shiny application based on a TIL framework that Tony and Pavel just presented on the previous presentation. This app displayed interactive visualizations of the data and had to be run locally per one of the requirements of the FDA. So continuing to pilot 3, it explored the use of Admiral. This package can be used to generate datasets from IDEM datasets from STDM data. Right now, with Pilot 4, we are building upon Pilot 2 to submit a self-contained bundle that makes it easier for folks at FDA to open the Shiny app and use it. One of the issues with the previous pilots was the difficulty in setting up the correct R environment. This step has nothing to do with the review process, but still requires some time and effort that we hope to cut down. It's just not very simple to set up all that you need on a new machine. There are packages such as REnv that help to control versioning, but it's not straightforward. The electronic submission itself wasn't a problem, as there's already R packages that help with this. Package byte converts the file structure and packages into a single text file. Exporter R could be used to create an XPT file for the data after being processed. All of these packages are available within the Pharmaverse or are part of the Pharmaverse ecosystem. But there were issues with the complexity of setting up the environment. This required some back and forth with the FDA as they experienced some communication and some problems and had to go back to us to solve those. And it's understandable. If we look at the instructions, they were 5 pages long, as we can see on the slide. And the reviewer had to install R, install our tools in case some of the dependencies need to be compiled, install our env, remotes, and package-lite, extract a text bundle with package-lite, use an R console to install the package via rm, run a command to update the Shiny application, and then finally launch the app. This process left a lot of room for errors, and on the next slide, Steamec will show a better way.
So hopefully you understand why we want to ease this process a bit, because looking at those instructions, they are just daunting. And that's why Pilot 4 embarked on this explorative journey to create a new packaging format for FDA submissions with a simple installation and fewer dependencies. That being said, how do we know if we succeeded? I think it's safe to say that if we created a process as simple as this, we could call it a success. The process would consist of installing a dependency, which might not even be R, downloading the submission code, running a single command, and opening the submission Shiny application, running on localhost. And that's it, you are done. You can now view the submission. You might wonder, doesn't that sound idealistic? How are you going to achieve that? Well, let me introduce you to Podman and WebR. During our Pilot 4 journey, we explored both of those technologies. They allowed us to simplify the packaging of a submission. What are they? WebR is an in-browser R runtime, meaning it makes it possible to run our Shiny server in a browser. This makes the requirements to running the application minimal, as you just need a browser and an HTTP server. No, you don't need R installed on your machine to run it. WebR solution has also a small footprint, meaning that the entire bundle, entire application, weighs less than 100 megabytes. And once built, it can be run anywhere, as WebAssembly has a great browser support, clocking at 97% as of today. Andre, you are muted.
So Podman is an obvious choice to try to achieve our goals. It is an open source alternative to Docker with all the same functionalities. It runs the Shiny app inside of a container, and the only software that you need to have installed is Podman. In this case, R is running inside of, so you actually have R in your system, but it's running inside of the container. However, it has a drawback, which requires to download large files containing the image. The environment is created by the team and is reproducible in any machine with the same architecture. So the reviewers don't have to follow any R-specific instructions. It's basically install R, pull the image, and run the virtual machine. The time investment is upfront, similar to WebR. As an added benefit, the configuration and virtual images are fully compliant with the OCI standards and is interchangeable with Docker, which might be relevant in the future if FDA changes its mind on which platform they prefer. So let's take a quick look at Podman, which was a safe bet with rapid prototyping that my colleague Vedder and I work on. This solution still requires Podman to be installed by the reviewer, but the following steps are simpler. This solution fulfills our goals as it won't require any troubleshooting or instructions with multiple sections, subsections, and several pages long. It is very configurable, allowing for any version of R to be used via the and via the continuous integration, we can build the image regularly and test it so that the last image is always up to date. Around 46 lines of code and some extra files are enough to configure to do this job. It took us more time building the images or setting up smart caching than actually getting the proof of concept rolling. This very flexible configuration file, called the Docker file, allows to set up the R version, different container registries to download a base image, and use a package cache as a volume when building the image. On the right side, we can see that the Shiny app developed during Pilot 2 was running inside of the container without any changes, just as it would be running from a local R studio or R console. And again, the instructions are quite straightforward. Make sure Podman is installed, pull the image, start the container with the right data, and then open the browser and navigate to the app. This aligns very well with what Timex said before. And it's a very simple set of instructions that just get the job done. The only caveat is that it has to have access to the container image, or the container registry to download a large image on the second step of this slide. But now that we've talked about Podman, Timek, can you tell us the story with WebR?
Sure. So if you attended Bart's talk yesterday, then you might already know what WebR is about. But for those who didn't, what is WebR? I'm going to explain it in our Shiny setting because that's what we did. And in a typical scenario, you have a browser running the UI of application. And then you have a server running inside our process. And there is a communication between them. In WebR, the browser part still stays. So we have a browser running the UI. This doesn't change. And moving on to the server, well, there's no server because the Shiny server runs inside the browser, and there is no Shiny server outside of browser. There is this one caveat that the bundle exported with Shiny Life has to be hosted with an HTTP server. So technically there is still a server, but not our Shiny one. And our Shiny one is running inside WebR. Having this explanation out of the way, let's see how we put this technology to use. Back in October last year, Pedro and I had this 2-week-long venture, and the goal was to explore WebR possibilities. At that time, Shiny Life was announced just a couple of weeks before we started, back in September at ShinyConf, and we definitely wanted to make use out of it. Also, we wanted to leverage work of previous pilots that Andrea mentioned by reusing as much code as possible and avoiding alternating the logic part. How did it go? It sure was a journey. We had all sorts of problems as opposed to just running Shiny app locally, because back then till and till data were not on cron, and WebR is limited only to packages on cron as it doesn't support building packages. Non-R files crashed Shiny Life exports, update functions did not work, and due to that, some of the Shiny widgets also did not work. And a long startup time made iterating on the application a lengthy process. But the good news is that my recent testing showed that most of those issues are gone by now. And the question is, how did we manage it at the time? Because there were issues that we faced. And first of all, we used a build script to handle static assets. As I mentioned, non-R files crashed the export. So we moved out the www directory out for the time of an export, and this way we could run the application locally perfectly fine and iterate on it, and we still had this opportunity to make an export with Shiny Life. Then we replaced update functions with render UI, and I can tell you it wasn't pretty, but hey, it worked. Finally, luckily for us, the application didn't depend too much on till and till data, so those 20 cheeky lines of code made the app work as if nothing happened. But it's worth noting, if you have watched previous presentation, that till is already on cron, so we don't need those things anymore. We could just use it directly. And moving on to the result, you can try it yourself under the link that's on the presentation. And the application takes some time to load. Thanks to Pedro and his hacking skills. You can see the package loading notification in the bottom right corner. And that's, basically the video that you are watching right now is already truncated. I think the full time might even be as long as a couple of minutes. However, once you are done, the entire application runs in your browser. That's why it allows people to do a live demo, just like Bart did yesterday. So everyone could have opened his application without doing heavy lifting on infrastructure side. As you can see, the application within the browser works just fine, and most of its functionalities are preserved. The only thing that changed was the UI that we put inside render UI as opposed to using update functions, and it was for the filters that you are seeing right now. So we kept most of the app functional. And if you want to build the application yourself, the code is available on GitHub, and you can give it a go. So for the WebR, the installation steps would be install a browser and HTTP server, download a bundled application, start HTTP server. And now, mind you, we are not talking about any specific HTTP server. You might use HTTP UV. If you want that, you can use a Python HTTP server or anything that you would like. Then you open the submission in your browser and you're done. Now I'm going to pitch one more talk. That's probably, if you are watching conference, you already heard a couple times that it's going to happen. But if you are interested in ShinyLife and WebR, then in about 3 hours from now, George Stack will have a talk about WebR and ShinyLife, so make sure to tune in. That being said, it's all that we have for today. And now it's your turn. Let us know in the chat, who do you think did it better, Polman, WebR, or the prior work that we were improving on?
Thank you so much. So I'll ask a question. Can you develop application as a mix of WebR and traditional Shiny R server? So the data and calculations, any heavy components run in the server, and the light one functions are in the WebR in the browser.
If I'm not mistaken, yes, but I haven't tried myself. That's purely based on what Bart said yesterday. So if you want an answer and hear it firsthand, just be sure to watch a replay from that talk.
Okay, thank you so much. Why Podman and not Docker? Is it because of the open source?
It was because of a change in Docker policy with the open source projects last year, and but since then the news from Docker and from the company that backs it is very positive, and I believe that the FDA itself is thinking about going back to Docker for a bunch of reasons. So at the moment, at the time, it was due to like some concerns about using it. But I think now that those are cleared.
Okay, thank you so much, Timek. Thank you, Andre. We hope to see more about the future after the pilot 4 and any journey further. Thank you for answering the question from your talk. See you around.